Welcome tonight. It's April 1st, 2021, and we're going to be talking about transforming and healing our hearts. Now, the interesting thing about this is our hearts are usually centered on love. And there's a lot of stuff that happens in our lives as human beings that actually affects our heart and makes our hearts hurt and go and become broken. And it's a tough thing to heal once you have a broken heart. And I'm going to review one thing about what we talked about last week, because when we're using energy rightfully or in the right way, we don't break other people's hearts. But we as humans, we're constantly doing things that hurt other people, and it hurts their hearts when we hurt them. And so righteousness is the rightful use of energy. Christ consciousness is the way or the path of righteousness. Freedom and empowerment is the gift for all. Loving thoughts and unconditional selfless service is what the mystical gives power to the whole. And using Christ consciousness or love in all things leads to our ascension. Now, why do we need to transform and heal our heart? Number one, our heart is where the soul resides, and our heart center works on highly powerful electromagnetic energy, believe it or not. And so our heart, when our heart goes into failure, or our heart is broken, or our heart is hurting for some reason, it doesn't work correctly, and it can stop the circulation to our brain and other organs and systems. And, for a long time, heart disease was the main cause of death before all the toxins and the chemicals and all the other things started coming in and causing us to get more and more cancer. And for the first time 3 years ago, cancer exceeded the death rate from heart attacks. And so, as you can see, our world is changing. And, this year they keep saying, COVID is the number 3 killer of people. Well, that may or may not be, because the third cause, last time I checked, was iatrogenic death, or dying from getting medical care, or the care of medical doctors actually kills you through misprescriptions or narcotic prescriptions, surgery, whatever it is, anesthesia. And it was the third main cause of death. And now they're saying that the virus is, but I'm still believing it's actually iatrogenic death, or caused by going to your doctor. So our intent and breathing with meditation increases our electromagnetic energy of our heart, and asking for God's love to fill our heart, and then our other centers, actually fills our hearts, mind, and soul with God's love. And that completes the most important commandment of all, loving the Lord thy God with all thy heart, mind, and soul. Now, I had a really interesting thing happen to me about 20 years ago. I was having constant heart pain, and it was because I was going through some real difficulties in my marriage. I was going through difficulties with the country and the medical system. I was, doing alternative medicine, and they were trying to reel me back into doing the standards of care. And the standards of care, as I knew them, were not actually standards of care. They were constructed by the pharmaceutical industry and the hospital systems and the insurance industry to make money and have doctors do exactly what they were told rather than being free thinkers and actually using things that would help their clients, their patients. And so I was moving away from medicine because I had found many things that actually helped that weren't the standard of care. And so they were coming after me because I was not practicing the standard of care. And my heart was hurting. In fact, I felt like I was having angina, and I was at the point, well, if I live or die, it doesn't matter because, if I die, I won't have to be this quack doctor doing things outside the standard of care. And I prayed and got the message that I needed to go to Half Dome in Yosemite National Park. And I wasn't sure why. But after going there and hiking the mountain, I had a heart attack about 2 miles from the top. And I heard a voice say, "You need to take your energy back." And I was like, "What do you mean?" And the voice said, "You're giving 65% of your vital force to your current wife, and it's not required of you to give her any of your energy. Your energy in your body is yours to do with what you will, and giving it to somebody else is not a proper thing to do." And I said, "Well, but I love my wife." And the voice said, "If you don't take back your energy, you won't get off this mountain today." And boy, that got my attention. And so I said, "Well, what do I do?" And the voice said, "Take your energy back." And I said, "How do I do that?" And it says, "Just say, I take back all my vital force." And so I said that in my mind, and all of a sudden I sat up, and my daughter was surprised because I had quit breathing and was turned purple. And I said, "We need to get up the mountain and get my friend not to send the helicopter up." So we headed up the mountain, and from that time forward, my heart has been healed. And I haven't had chest pain in 20 years, which is amazing and wonderful. So we can transform and heal our hearts. Now, what happens when we fill our body with love and with God's love, especially fill our heart with God's love? It's interesting, anxiety, fear, pain, physical disease starts going away. Our thoughts and feelings fill up with God's love, and so we start loving outside of ourselves even. Because when we fill up with God's love, our body, heart, mind, and soul feels peace, and we feel that love, and we start loving other people, even people who we've had a difficulty with. And so God's organizational energy enters into our body and makes perfection enter into our cells and organs. And that's what happened to me when I received that blessing of God's love into my heart. Came to find out that it really did a great job in healing my body. So, how do we transform and heal our hearts? What I was taught about 1.5 years ago is we do a meditation that brings God's love into our heart and then into the rest of our body. We have to bring it into the heart first because that's the center of love. That is the chakra of love, you might say. And it's green in color, and when you perfect your heart's love, the chakra actually goes pink when you get into the Christ consciousness love. Now, by the design of nature, our bodies are highly adaptable. These are the words of Saint Germain. Forces of high thinking and frequencies can accelerate this with our intent and voicing the following: clearing our karma, personality defects, and negative thought forms and energies. Do a deep cleansing breath. So I'm going to teach you how to bring that energy in. So what I do is I take a big deep cleansing breath and I bring the energy of the earth, Mother Earth, bring it up into my heart center. And I hold that breath for a few seconds, and then I release anything that isn't love with the earth. And then you take a big deep cleansing breath going high into the heavens, connecting to the great central sun and God's energy, bringing that energy down into your heart chakra, filling it up with God's love. And I'm going to have this all on a Word document or PDF, probably both, and I'll send it to everybody that's participating in this. And if others need it, you can share it. This is actually going to be the first time I've written down this whole meditation. So, next, you breathe in and you say, I invoke the divine cosmic powers of the great central sun to fill my heart with God's unconditional love. And you hold the breath for 3 seconds, visualizing God's love entering into your heart, and then breathe out. Then you breathe in again. The law of threes tells us we have to do this 3 times. So you breathe in again and say, I invoke the divine cosmic powers of the great central sun to fill my heart with God's unconditional love. And then you hold it for 3 seconds. You can close your eyes while you're doing this. Visualizing God's love entering into your heart, and then you breathe out. Then you breathe in a 3rd time. I invoke the divine cosmic powers of the great central sun to fill my heart with God's unconditional love. And then you hold it again for 3 seconds, visualizing God's love entering into your heart, and then breathe out, releasing anything that isn't God's love. Next, you breathe in again. I invoke the cosmic divine powers of the great central sun to fill my heart with God's unconditional love. And then I move God's love up into my throat chakra energy center and say, all that I say from my mouth and hear from my ears is filled with the love of God. And you hold that for 3 seconds, visualizing God's love being spoken from your mouth. And then breathe out. Excuse me for just a sec. I'm going to get my dry throat moistened. Breathe in again. I invoke the divine cosmic powers of the great central sun to fill my heart with God's unconditional love. And then I move God's love up into my throat chakra, throat energy center, and say, all that I say from my mouth and hear from my ears is filled with the love of God. And then you hold it for 3 seconds, visualizing God's love being spoken from your mouth, and breathe out, and then breathe in again, and you repeat it again. I invoke the divine cosmic powers of the great central sun to fill my heart with God's unconditional love. And then move God's love up into your throat center, energy center, and say, all that I say from my mouth and hear from my ears is filled with the love of God. And you hold it for 3 seconds, visualizing love's God being spoken from your mouth, and then breathe out. Now, we go to the next breath. Breathe in again. I invoke the divine cosmic powers of the great central sun to fill my heart with God's unconditional love. Then move God's love up into your 3rd eye energy center and say, all that I see with my eyes and see with my 3rd eye is filled with the love of God. And you hold it for 3 seconds, visualizing God's love being seen with your eyes. Then breathe out. Breathe in again. I invoke the cosmic divine powers of the great central sun to fill my heart with God's unconditional love. Then move God's love up into the 3rd eye center and say, all that I see with my eyes and see with my third eye is filled with the love of God. And you hold that for 3 seconds, visualizing God's love seen with our eyes and with your pineal gland. Because you'll see in your mind when you go into meditation the colors and the frequencies, and sometimes they'll appear in your third eye as pictures or even lights that shift, and you ask God to reveal what they're trying to communicate to you. And then a third time, you breathe in again. I invoke the divine cosmic powers of the great central sun to fill my heart with God's unconditional love. Then move that love up into your third eye and say, all that I see with my eyes and see with my third eye is filled with the love of God. You hold it for 3 seconds, visualizing God's love seen with our eyes, and then breathe out. You can even see it with your third eye, or see interdimensionally. Next, we breathe in again. I invoke the divine cosmic powers of the great central sun to fill my heart with God's unconditional love. Then you move it up into our mind, which is the 7th energy center, and say, all that I think is filled with the love of God. And the love of God is all that I think. And you hold it for 3 seconds, visualizing God's love coming from our thoughts and our mind. Then breathe out. Then you breathe in again. I invoke the divine cosmic powers of the great central sun to fill my heart with God's unconditional love. And you move it up into your mind energy center and say, all that I think about is filled with the love of God, and the love of God is all that I think about. And you hold it for 3 seconds, visualizing God's love coming from your mind. Then breathe out. Breathe in again. I invoke the divine cosmic powers of the great central sun to fill my heart with God's unconditional love. Then move it up into your mind center and say, all I think about is filled with the love of God, and the love of God is all that I think about. Hold it for 3 seconds, visualizing God's love coming from your mind, then breathe out. Now, breathe in again. I invoke the divine cosmic powers of the great central sun to fill my heart with God's unconditional love, then move God's love up into your mighty I Am center, which is up above your body, and say, all that I connect to is filled with the love of God. And you hold it for 3 seconds, visualizing God's love coming from your mighty I Am center, and then breathe out. And you again, breathe in again. I invoke the divine cosmic powers of the great central sun to fill my heart with God's unconditional love, because you want to keep filling up your heart. Then move God's love up into your mighty I Am center and say, all that I connect to is filled with the love of God. And you hold it for 3 seconds, visualizing God's love coming from your mighty I Am presence, and then breathe out. And then you do that one more time. For time's sake, we're going to keep going. You breathe in again. I invoke the divine cosmic powers of the great central sun to fill my heart with God's unconditional love. Then move God's love down into your solar plexus center and say, all that I feel is filled with God's love. And God's love is all that I feel. So you're releasing all the stuff in your solar plexus that is not the love of God. And you visualize God's love coming from your solar plexus center, and breathe out. Breathe in again. I invoke the cosmic divine powers of the great central sun to fill my heart with God's unconditional love. And then you move down into your solar plexus. All that I feel is filled with God's love, and God's love is all that I feel. And hold it for 3 seconds, visualizing that God's love is all that you're feeling, and hold that for 3 seconds and move that love. Have that love coming from your solar plexus out into the world instead of other emotions. and breathe out. And then you do that one more time. You breathe in again. I invoke the divine cosmic powers of the great central sun to fill my heart with God's unconditional love. Then you move it down into your solar plexus. All that I feel, my emotion is filled with God's love, and God's love is all that I feel. Hold it for 3 seconds, visualizing God's love coming out from our solar plexus center, and breathe out. Next, we breathe in again. I invoke the divine cosmic powers of the great central sun to fill my heart with God's unconditional love. Then you move God's love down into your sacral plexus or your creative center and say, all that I create is filled with God's love, and God's love is all that I create. And hold it for 3 seconds, visualizing God's love coming from your sacral plexus center, then breathe out. Breathe in again. I invoke the divine cosmic powers of the great central sun to fill my heart with God's unconditional love, and then move it down into God's love down into your sacral plexus or creative center and say, all that I create is filled with God's love, and God's love is all that I create. You hold it for 3 more seconds, visualizing God's love coming out of your sacral plexus and your creations being created with God's love. Then we do it one more time, breathing again. I invoke the divine cosmic powers of the great central sun to fill my heart with God's unconditional love. And then I move down into my sacral plexus creative center. All that I create is filled with God's love, and God's love is all that I create. You hold it for 3 more seconds with that love exuding from your creative center. And so that's 3 of them. We'll go to the next. So we breathe in again. I invoke the divine cosmic powers of the great central sun to fill my heart with God's unconditional love. And then you move God's love down into your root center, saying, all that I connect to on the earth is filled with God's love. And God's love is with all plants, animals, creatures connected to the earth. And you hold it for 3 seconds, visualizing God's love coming from your root plexus center out to the earth. Then breathe out. Breathe in again. I invoke the cosmic divine powers of the great central sun to fill my heart with God's unconditional love. Then move God's love down into your root chakra and say, all that I connect to on the earth is filled with God's love, and God's love is with all plants, animals, creatures connected to the earth. Hold for 3 seconds, visualizing God's love, and then do it one more time. Breathe in again. I invoke the cosmic divine powers of the great central sun to fill my heart with God's unconditional love. Then move God's love down into your root chakra and say, all that I connect to on the earth is filled with God's love, and God's love is with all plants, animals, creatures connected to the earth. Hold it for 3 seconds, visualizing God's love, and then say, for all of this I send forth the deepest gratitude. So be it, so it is. I am that I am. So, we're trying to transform and heal our heart. And we do this, believe it or not, by bringing the love of God into our heart. God's love has an interesting reaction in our body. It's a power that created the universe. And so it's a power that can recreate your heart and make your heart be filled with God's love. But the other interesting thing is, with that organizational love comes the organization of perfection. The universe was created in perfection through God's love for us, because He created the universe for us. And then He organized everything perfectly. The planets were in sync. Time, space, connection was perfected. All the organization, all the plants, all the animals, all the oceans, the aquatic animals, everything was perfected and organized through God's love. Now, what do you think is going to happen to your body when you're bringing that perfected love of God into your heart and all your energy centers? You know what happened to me? I started feeling more love, not only for myself, but for everyone around me. It helped heal all of my energy centers by bringing that God's love into my heart first, and then spreading it throughout my energy systems, throughout my body. And, you know, I've been taught by Saint Germain, when you send love to your mighty I am presence, or your 8th chakra connection to God, you actually receive love back from your mighty I am presence and from God. So by sending love out, we actually receive even more love. So it's very fascinating. And you can say at the end, I am now connected to the love of all God's creations. For all of this, I send forth the deepest gratitude. So be it, and so it is. I am that I am. Gratitude is the ultimate receivership. In other words, when you're meditating, you create a vortex of energy. And when you go into gratitude, you send another vortex of energy that draws even more back into your body from the divine. So now is the present moment. It is now time to love yourself. You know, during this time, we've had more suicides, more fear, more anxiety than ever before on planet Earth. And that's the way that the dark wanted things to happen. They know that if they put you into fear and anxiety, number one, you won't think clearly, because you can't make good choice when you're in fear or sympathetic discharge. It just makes you want to fly, fight, you know, or you freeze. So you either want to run, fight, or you freeze. And you're not thinking clearly. But as you bring love back into your body, it actually dissipates all that fear, all that anxiety, all that frozen energy that happens when we get into sympathetic discharge. So I'm here to tell you this is very valuable during this time. And I actually received it just before the pandemic hit. And I did this meditation for a group down in McAllen, Texas. And they loved it so much that when I went up and spoke at an event up in Mount Shasta, California, a lot of them came there to hear again what was going on. And they loved it again when they were up at Mount Shasta. And so I'm presenting this to you because this is a very powerful way we can dissipate the energies of fear, shame, blame, anything that's going on in your life, anxiety. This will transmute all that energy through God's love and change your life. I know it's changed mine. I've become much more heart-centered since I've been doing this meditation. Now, do it now in the present moments. It's time that we love ourselves. Now it's time to decree that love. And this is a good way to do it. Mental thought creates our intent. Our thought creates energy. Our energy creates actions, cause, effects, constructs, personality. Our personality creates our personal reality. And our personal reality helps make the collective reality. Our world reality is then formed and universal affecting reality. So we start with ourselves. And as we change ourselves, you know, in order for the world to change, I have to change. In order for the world to get better, I must get better. And I can't think of any better thing than to bring love, God's pure love, into your heart. So, the great divine director came to me last night again, and he said, Scott, it's important that you teach this, because this is going to bring that love of God into everybody so that we love each other better. Because once you love yourself, you can treat your neighbor as yourself and love your neighbor as yourself. So just know that it's very important that we do these things. So start today loving yourself. Application of the teachings and techniques means you got to spend time each day doing God's love meditation. You know, it will help you. You know, I'm giving you assignments each time, each week, and hopefully you're doing them in this week. And just add them and keep doing the others. If you do this for 42 days, you will shift everything in your body. Your cellular matrix will change. Your soul will change. And you will bring that love and light into your lives. Clear out negative thoughts each day as often as needed. Ho'oponopono, everybody, if you need. You know, when I wake up at night, instead of going, geez, I wish I could go back to sleep, you know what I do? I start ho'oponoponoing anybody that I have any thoughts other than love with. And intent to love your life and all humanity with the earth gives you more loving thoughts and the more love-filled life. And you're going to fill the earth with that love, which will be very good. Okay, and our spring mentoring still open. People can still sign up. You know, tell your neighbors, family, friends, whoever, and they can sign up, and we'll change the consciousness. Now, next week we're going to be talking about transforming and healing my power centers, and so it's going to be a little different, but I'm going to teach you how to go to the void each day and create new power into each of your energy centers. And this is a very powerful lesson, so don't miss it. This week we're doing God's love meditation every day to love yourself, the planet, and others. And we'll answer your questions now. Okay. You said a few weeks ago to do the Ho'oponopono until you feel different. Suppose I don't feel much. What do I do? Well, you know, you do it until you're just exhausted from doing it. And believe me, as you do the Ho'oponopono, you're sending out love to that person or that organization or whatever you're having a conflict with. And then, I'm sorry we're having this conflict. And you state what it is. You know, like with me, I'll just give an example. I was really angry at the government, and so I had to, you know, say I love all the workers in the government, and I'm sorry that you're doing things that may not be following the law, and I forgive you, I forgive myself, and I'm very grateful that you're doing your jobs and you're going to be doing a better job following the laws and the rules. And, you know, and then I repeat it. I love all of you people working in the government, and, you know, and keep going, because sometimes we have to Ho'oponopono organizations. And sometimes we're unsure when they're going to feel it. Just know that as you are communicating telepathically with every person that you're putting your mind to do it to. We are more powerful than you can believe, and our telepathy is extremely powerful in changing energy. So as you continue doing this, it keeps signaling, and they're hearing you in their minds, and they think it's coming from themselves. You know, the cabal, uses telepathy to influence us, but they don't do it with love. And love is the most powerful power on the planet. So as you say, I love you, you're using that power to shift and change consciousness on the planet. Not only the planet, but the people on the planet. And how are we going to change the planet? By communicating love, communicating, I'm sorry that this has happened between us, and I forgive you for whatever you did to me, and I forgive myself. And I am so grateful that you're here on the planet at this time, and I'm grateful that we're changing things with God's love for the better. So, very important. Do we imagine, even if I can't really feel it, like we are acting? You know, actors are interesting. They do. They put emotions into what they're doing. And that's why we love to go to movies. That's why we love to go to the theater. That's why we love music. The people in production of these things, they know that emotion will move the people. So yeah, we have to act it out until you feel it. And the same thing with Ho'oponopono. You'll feel it. And if you don't think it's doing anything, believe me, trust me, it is. Hugh Lin was the funniest guy when I met him, but he said when he started at this prison, he could feel the negative energy all around him. And so he started out very gently doing the Ho'oponopono with these psychopathic criminals. And he came to find that as he did it more and more, he actually started loving them. He actually started feeling sorry for them. He started forgiving them and forgiving himself for his earlier thoughts about them. You know, I mean, these guys were murderers, rapists, all kinds of stuff. And he started actually shifting his own consciousness with these prisoners. And guess what? The prisoners started changing. They didn't know Hugh Lin was doing this to them, but they probably later found out as they became better people and they were permitted to go talk to him. But let me tell you, these things are so powerful that yes, you act as if it is, and it will become. It's an old saying that is very powerful, and that I've learned from many psychics, many powerful people. You have to act the part. You know, why was Ronald Reagan one of the greatest presidents? He was an actor. And you don't want to hear this, but guess who else belonged to the Actors Guild? President Trump. He finally got out of it because, you know, he realized that a lot of the problems were existing in that, but we go with that. So I know tonight we're going to end a little early, and that's okay, because I want you to ponder about what we've talked about tonight. I want you to know that I'm going to send you the video so you can follow the video again, and I'm going to put it all in a Word document and a PDF document. Now, I haven't done that yet, so it's going to take me some time, but when we send you the copy of the video, I'll also send you the information so you can do this on your own. And I want you to start practicing doing it. And just know that it will shift not only your consciousness, but the consciousness of all those around you. So let's give you all a blessing. In the name of the Almighty, I am that I am, and by virtue of the decrees from the great divine director, we bless each and every one of you. We bless you that you will be able to receive God's love in your hearts, and that you'll be able to move that love throughout your energy systems in your body and outside of your body, that you can do this in any way you please, but it will bring change into your soul as well as all of those around you. Because as you raise your consciousness and become God's love, become God's perfection and organizational energy, you will receive more creative energy, more feelings of God's love, more energy to connect you to Mother Earth, more energy in your own heart, perfecting your heart and correcting anything that isn't perfect in your heart, that it'll perfect your voice and your hearing. It'll perfect your eyes. It will perfect your mind and your soul's connection to your mighty I Am presence. We bless you with these things, that you will know and practice them and use them to change your life for the better. And we promise you from God's love that you will be able to ascend into the fifth dimension by doing these things. And we seal this blessing upon you in the name of the Almighty, I am that I am, and in the name of all the ascended beings of light and love, including the Christ, consciousness, energy, and Jesus, in Jesus' name, so be it, so it is. God bless all of you. Thank you for listening tonight, and we'll see you next week and teach you about how to integrate into the void and bring out the energies that you need for your lives. So thank you for listening, and we'll talk to you soon.